cases of coronavirus in Victoria. That's 6 new cases since yesterday's report. 4 of those are linked to known outbreaks and complex cases, and 2 are under investigation by our public health team. 2 cases were reclassified. I'm sad to say there have now been 809 Victorians pass away as a result of the global pandemic. That's an increase of 2 since yesterday's report. 1 female in her 80s, 1 male in his 90s. There are 16 Victorians in hospital, 2 are in intensive care, and neither of those 2 are on a ventilator. A total of 2,780,231 test results have been received since the beginning of the year. That's an increase of 16,429 tests since yesterday. Can I thank each of those almost 16,500 Victorians who got tested just the day before. That's a really important thing and something we're deeply grateful for. That's a very strong number, and if you combine that with the previous 2 days, which essentially reflect the weekend, to be well into the 9,000s over the weekend, both days of the weekend, is an improvement on total numbers in terms of the recent trend. I know I've said this literally thousands of times, but I will say it again because it's arguably the most important thing you can do. If you've got symptoms, any symptoms, mild, doesn't matter how mild they are, don't wait till tomorrow. Please go and get tested today. And the basic logic behind that is if we can find you as positive, then we can protect you, we can help you protect your family, and in turn we can protect every family, put a public health response around you and your family, wrap our arms around you and make sure that you're properly supported, and make sure that you're not inadvertently spreading this virus to other families. What we've seen in recent days, whether it be Frankston, Chadstone, Kilmore, Benalla, we've seen patterns that can run literally the length of our state, and they run quickly. This thing is wicked, as we've said on so many occasions, and I think all Victorians know and understand this. It's silent often with very mild symptoms. It is rapid in that it moves very, very quickly, and it can be away from you well before anyone's been to get a test. That's why it's so important. Even the mildest of symptoms, please don't put getting tested off. Please go and get a test as soon as you possibly can. There's more than 200 sites across the state. Jerome is here today to speak about some of the targeted testing work we've done in and around Chadstone, the Kilmore community who've done an amazing job. Can I thank everybody in the Kilmore community for coming forward to get tested. Jerome will speak to that in more detail, but this only works if everybody buys in, if everybody plays their part, and there's no greater responsibility and there's no greater contribution that a symptomatic Victorian can make than to get tested, and to get tested fast. We'll get your test results back to you very quickly, and then we can put that response in place to protect you and to protect everyone, and to drive these numbers down so that we can keep them down and start to open up with those further safe and steady steps. There are 26 healthcare workers who are active cases. We thank them for their work and all of their colleagues, many tens of thousands of them across the whole state. The rolling averages to 6 October are Metro 9.9, so under 10 for the first time. Regional Victoria just 0.3. In terms of mystery cases, so cases classified as unknown source, for the 14-day period to the 4th of October, 12 in Metro Melbourne, none in Regional Victoria. The Metro Regional split, no new cases in Regional Victoria today, and there are just 2 active cases in Regional Victoria as of today's update. In terms of active cases in aged care, just 58 active cases in aged care, so those numbers continue to fall, and that'll be a mixture of staff as well as potentially some residents. And when I say staff, it's the broadest context, so it's not just clinical staff, it can be staff who've got any connection to an aged care outbreak, and of course an aged care outbreak is just a single case, is treated the same as many more cases given the underlying vulnerability of people in those settings. In terms of active cases in disability facility settings, it's still just that single staff member, and hopefully that person will move out of our data once they have cleared the virus. The final thing I just wanted to say, can I just ask Victorians to pay close attention to the Vic Emergency app or the Vic SES website today, ses.vic.gov.au. There are some severe weather warnings, particularly in relation to what are expected to be significant rain events in some parts of the state. SES do a fantastic job, but if we can all just be aware of our circumstances, be aware of what's coming later on today and perhaps over the next few days, that helps them do their work. They are amazing, and we've seen them tested, but equal to that test in recent weeks and months with high winds and a range of other really difficult challenges. But if people can just across the state, particularly in regional Victoria, keep an eye out on that Victorian Emergency app and the SES website. My latest update was that there's significant rainfall expected in the northeast of the state, but everybody should be aware of those circumstances. That just makes the job of our emergency services heroes, both career and volunteer, just that little bit easier. Now, as you know, we've had a significant outbreak coming out of Chadstone, moving to Kilmore. There's been a lot of testing activity. Testing really is key to this, finding out what that chain of transmission looks like and then trying to disrupt that by having people isolate, having people have that appropriate public health response. Jerome is driving all of our testing across the whole state, and the numbers are strong, the community engagement is strong. We're very grateful to everyone who's come forward and got tested. We're very grateful to everybody, whether it be a cafe owner who's kept absolutely meticulous records of who has been in that cafe, all the way through to people who are honestly and frankly answering contact tracing interview questions. Testing is central to this, and Jerome's going to give us an update on recent performance, particularly as it relates to those outbreaks. And then, of course, we're happy to take any and all questions you have.
Thank you, Premier. Good morning. We've had over 160,000 Victorians tested over the last 2 weeks across the state. And again, that's a phenomenal effort, particularly on the back of a very strong number yesterday, 16,429 people coming forward to get tested. This is the way in which we find out where the virus still is. And this is also, as the Premier says, how we can keep you and your family, and your loved ones and your friends safe of the coronavirus. We've talked over the last few days around an associated set of clusters around Frankston, Chadstone and Kilmore. I'm pleased to say that the Frankston cluster that started at the beginning of last week now looks like it's well under control. We have 7 positive cases. Those cases have remained stable. And my thanks to the community in Frankston for their support in coming out to get tested and supporting the family at the centre of that particular outbreak. Chadstone has been a particularly challenging outbreak. It's still a very active shopping centre for people doing click and collect and essential goods. We now have 31 cases associated with Chadstone. That means people who've either contracted it through contact at Chadstone or also through household contacts of those individuals. But I'm pleased to say we've had over 1,300 people tested in Chadstone over the last few days. We've set up a dedicated walk-up and drive-through centre at Chadstone. We've had a fantastic response from people who've been using Chadstone over the last week or so to coming forward to get tested, and also particularly good support from the retailers and the traders that are there. Yesterday we door knocked every single premises, every single retailer, and they've been fantastic at encouraging their staff to get out and get tested. We continue to test at Chadstone for the coming days, and my message remains for people who are working at Chadstone, for people who have shopped or been at Chadstone in the last 10 days. If you have any symptoms, no matter how slight, you should come forward and get tested. You can get tested at Chadstone or get tested nearest to where you currently are. The Kilmore piece is a highly risky transmission site for us, and I think it's also an indication of the kind of challenges that we as Victorians will have to face in the weeks and months ahead. This all started with actually some really good behaviour by the cafe. Both the waitress who got tested as soon as she felt the onset of symptoms, she got tested early, and that's how we were able to identify that there was an issue in Kilmore at all. Yesterday morning we set up a testing centre. We've had 2 testing centres. We have a testing centre at Kilmore District Hospital that's been running for a while. We extended the hours there yesterday, and we also set up a testing centre yesterday afternoon at Kilmore Soldiers Memorial Hall. Over 200 people came forward out of Kilmore yesterday to get tested, and I think that's a phenomenal response in such a short period of time. We had both centres running full bore during the course of the day, and we expect them to be busy again today. We'd encourage everybody who's in Kilmore who has the remotest symptoms, the slightest symptoms, please come and get tested. And my thanks to the 200 yesterday who did just that. We're also asking people who have been to the Oddfellows Cafe, if you've been there between Wednesday the 30th of September and last Saturday, the 3rd of October, please get tested, full stop. We just want to ensure whether you picked up a takeaway coffee, whether you went there and had a meal, if you've had any contact with the cafe over those 3 days, Wednesday the 30th of September to Saturday the 3rd of October, we'd like you to go and get tested. We want to see whether that's going to bring out any other cases. We want to get to the bottom of this as quickly as we possibly can. We've also followed up, and thanks to the excellent records that the cafe has kept, they gave us 177 people, customers, who've been through the cafe over those 4 days. Each one of those people has been followed up, and as a result, we have 177 people, and the people that they live with in turn, so 170 people and their immediate households, who are now self-isolating. That's a big ask. We're asking them to do that because they are close contacts of a suspected case. We will go through and test them over the coming days, and that's being arranged. But we are deeply grateful to those 177 people and their families who are now having to face a self-isolation for the next 2 weeks. And they're doing that not just on behalf of themselves, they're doing it on behalf of the whole community, so we can continue to enjoy the limited freedoms that we have, and we can continue to stay on the trajectory that we need to be on to free up the rest of the wider state. So a number of people who have played in a critically important role. We will continue to drive a very heavy testing presence around Kilmore over the next few days. We also have a testing centre at Benalla, but we believe it's a much smaller exposure, but there is a testing centre at Benalla that people can access should they need to do so. I'd also like to thank the team at Goulburn Valley Health. Again, we've talked over the last few weeks around how we're using our regional public health units to do the contact tracing. They are close to the community, they understand the connections and the networks. The team at Goulburn Valley Health have been at the forefront of tracking through 177 people, and we've had support from the regional public health units across the state with that effort. And as a result of that, we're able to get to those people as soon as we had the contact register to make sure that they were safe and that they were being supported to go and do the right thing. Finally, for me, this all highlights the fact that, as the Premier said, the virus continues to be wild and active. It is exceptionally dangerous. It moves very quickly. It can transmit on the slightest contact. So all the basics that we've all got used to, we need to reinforce. Our focus on good hand hygiene, on mask wearing, on social distance. Whether you're in Metro Melbourne or, as we're now seeing, whether you're in regional Victoria, those messages continue to be as true as they ever were. We will get through this together. We'll get through it by people doing the right thing, as we've seen in the examples at Kilmore over the last few days. We'll get through it together. Thank you very much.
Jerome, just on those clusters, is Kilmore still at 2 cases?
Yes, that's right. So at this point in time, Kilmore is still at 2 cases. We will have the 177 people started testing yesterday. We'll test them over the next few days. We have, of course, the test results for 200 people from yesterday. We'll get those results during the course of today. So I should add that 96% of all of our testing results are now coming within 24 hours.
And those 3 additional cases at Chadstone cluster, what are they made up of?
Yeah, the additional cases at Chadstone are all close contacts of the existing known cases. So
family or household close contacts?
They're all household close contacts. So we are at this stage, Chadstone looks like it's being contained within the footprint that we established for itself. And of course, this is one of the critical elements of what we're trying to do, is to rapidly throw a cordon around any outbreaks to make sure that contacts and their close contacts are all kept together. We test them and we keep them safe.
Jerome, with the 2 outbreaks, you've got different advice for Kilmore. That's asymptomatic testing, but not at Chadstone. Why would it not make sense to have asymptomatic testing done at Chadstone as well?
Yeah, look, the Chadstone cluster has been growing over about 5 or 6 days now. So we feel we've got through 1,300 people in around that area. What we've done with Chadstone is we've door knocked every single commercial premise in that area, because it's really been a focus around the staff, and we believe some staff using common facilities. So our focus has been on that group of people. We've been able to eyeball them and get eyes on them. With regard to the cafe, because we have such a specific location, it is one cafe in Kilmore, it is one defined set of people who came to that cafe on those 3 days. We're now asking anybody who's in that situation to go and get tested, because it's a very narrow contact. Clearly, anybody in the wider Kilmore community, if you've got symptoms, please go and get tested.
But didn't you have, in that Chadstone cluster, there were some of the cases were not customers, not staff. I think Brett Sutton said on Sunday there was 4 that people were at the centre at that particular time that they think are linked. So does that tell you that there's probably a few other cases floating around there that you haven't got the original source from?
No, at this stage we've got no evidence for that. So we have a very clear index case in terms of where this infection source was from. We have every reason to believe that the waitress and the father would have contracted it from that index case. We're now going into the next ring. We have thrown 177 people plus their household contacts around all this, so we have a large group of people already in the catchment. And as I say, that's why this push around 200 people getting tested yesterday and more today is so important that we flush this to the bottom.
Jerome, we had the first case at Chadstone last Wednesday. Why did we wait 6 days to go door knocking on shops in the shopping centre?
No, we went door knocking last Thursday, Friday at Chadstone, so we've had one pass through the shopping centre already. We did another pass through yesterday because, again, we wanted to ensure that we had people coming through. We've also been looking at individual registers, so we know exactly how many staff are working for each employer. So we've been able to see what proportion of staff has been getting tested for individual employers, and we've having those conversations with the major employers at Chadstone. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I mean, with the isolation of cases,
Yep.
is it worth the next ring of a person's contact, like that third degree, also isolating, given how many or how few cases we have at the moment? It
Yeah, exactly.
probably wouldn't be a great impost on that second ring.
No, we've been trialling that for a number of days, and we have employed that tactic in relation to some of the outbreaks that we've been talking about this morning and in recent days. And I think that'll be a feature of some of the work that we do. That's beyond, I think, what any other state does. But I think that we've got enough community transmission that means you've got to do things at that next level if you can, and the numbers are low enough. I think the point you make is a good one. The numbers are low enough that we can bring that public health response. So that's that extra group of people that's been under trial, if you like, for a number of days now. I think sort of toward the end of last week. So
How would that? Can you just play that out in terms of who that?
well, what I
next
might
ring-
do is I might get Jerome to play that out because he was briefed on this very early this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Premier. So as I indicated earlier, so the approach we're taking, if I take the 177 people who've been through the Kilmore Cafe, we've asked them to isolate. We've asked all of their immediate close contacts to isolate. So they had a call yesterday morning that said, who do you live with? We need all of those people who you live with to stay within the house and we'll arrange testing for you to make sure that we keep them safe. So that's the close contacts that we have a definite contact with, and the people that they immediately live with, and any other immediate close contacts that they identify at that first interview.
Are we doing that at Chadstone as well?
So we're starting that at Chadstone as well. So that approach has phased in over the last. So for the newer cases coming out of Chadstone, that approach is being taken now. But this contacts of contacts approach is particularly valuable at the start of an outbreak, because you're dealing with a larger group of people at the outset, and you're then working through that group and making sure that if we're seeing transmission from that first set of cases to their immediate contacts, that we've already got them in a self-isolated environment.
Do you think if we'd done it from the start at Chadstone, it would have limited the cases to less than 31?
No, I don't think so, because if you look at the Chadstone cluster, actually, we've got a pretty good grip on it. First off, clearly we have a few days before anybody is tested symptomatically, before anybody has come forward, where you've got people who are infectious who are going about their work. And we've clearly seen some transmission during those first 3 or 4 days at Chadstone before we knew there was a positive case there, where they've transmitted it to other workers in that complex. And then, of course, people go home at night, so they're going to, at high risk of spreading it to people that they live with. So that's why this, again, the message around getting tested early are just so important, because we want to get hold of people as quickly as possible. But also why this social distancing, mask wearing and hand hygiene at work is just critically important, because we don't want people to pick this up at work and to take it home. That's the key message.
And if I can add, it's just never acceptable to go to work if you're feeling unwell. That's the other key point. If you've got symptoms, the only thing you should be doing is going and getting tested. You should not be going to work. You should not be making that judgment, well, I'll shake that off, I'll feel better later today. No. There's so little cold and flu symptoms around across the Victorian community at the moment. If you've got those symptoms, there's every chance that you've got this, and there's an absolute certainty that if you go into a workplace environment, almost any workplace environment, with symptoms, you will spread it, you will give it to someone else. So that's a really important message as well. It's not about commentary on what people may have done. We can't change that. But what everybody watching and listening now can do is change their potential behaviour in the future. and that is if you've got symptoms, any symptoms, you just can't be going to work. You can't be spending time with anyone else. You've got to go and get tested, and you can't put that off. You've got to go and get tested as soon as possible.
We know, for example, with this Chadstone one, that it was a cleaner who went to work when she probably shouldn't have. Her boss said that he thinks it was because of financial reasons. She didn't want to miss a shift. Where do you think we can improve on that? Do you think the business has a greater responsibility to make her aware of the payments your government has? Do you think your government could make them more visible? Because clearly she might not be sitting at home watching these press conferences every day. She might not.
No, but this is not the only medium that we use to try and get that message out. I didn't get to that person, but I think it is well understood, and we've certainly used every platform we can possibly find, and some of which are a bit innovative in that they're quite old-fashioned. They've got nothing to do with the web, they've got nothing to do with social media. Just about word of mouth, communication through unions, communication through employer networks, communication at large workplaces. There are payments while you're waiting for your test result, and there are payments if you are positive and you don't have sick leave to fall back on. That will continue to be a feature of our response, and COVID Normal will be wall to wall even more. If we can find even further opportunities to get that message out, then we will. But being aware that there's a program has influenced many people's behaviour, because we know that many people have in fact claimed those payments. But there'll always be others who make that choice, and it's very difficult to understand the thought process they go through beyond, of course, that notion of if I miss the shift I don't get paid. There are payments there for you. So Michael, we'll keep pushing that message out as much as we can, but it's really on individuals. You just can't do it. You can't go to work if you've got symptoms, let alone if you're waiting for a test result. So you had enough symptoms to go and get tested, you've got to wait for the test result, let alone if you are in fact positive. That doesn't relate to these recent cases, but we have seen a little bit of that behaviour, and it doesn't take much. It only takes one person to do the wrong thing, and it can be 30, 40, 50, some cases hundreds of positive cases can come from that.
Do you feel like you have the Chadstone cluster under control?
That's certainly the advice from the public health team. They've done a great job in very rapid response, very localised response. Some of the tactics as well has been, not just what the textbook would tell you, but going indeed above and beyond that. So not door knocking every other business once, but doing it twice. Pop-up testing clinics. I think there's also been some engagement with a number of high rotation businesses in neighbouring strip shopping centres as well. So not just within Chadstone, but indeed in the immediate environment. This has been very well handled, but at the same time, it just speaks to how widely infectious it is, that it can run, even when it's well handled, you can finish up with 30 plus cases.
Do you feel like at the moment the extent of it, it's not going to derail further plans for us to open up?
No, I'd be more concerned that, not concerned because I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from getting tested. The work that the Kilmore people have done is just amazing. And we want to know those cases, because even if they come through as additional positives in tomorrow's test results or the day after, they're known to us. So we can wrap a public health response around those people. And then back to the comment we've made on so many different occasions, numbers are very important, but the narrative that sits behind those numbers is equally important when we get down to these very small numbers. Chance does play a much larger part when you've got such a low base. But a case where we think we've got it contained, we know as much about it as we can, even if they're complex circumstances, we want to know about that case, because if we don't, then it appears as 30 or 40 or 50 in 3 or 4 days' time. Or it's that bubbling level of virus out there in the community that can run really quickly, even weeks afterwards. So there's arguably, as I said before, nothing more important for a symptomatic Victorian to do than to come forward and get tested today. Don't put it off until tomorrow. By putting it off till tomorrow, we're 24 hours behind. If you go and get tested this afternoon, you'll get your results around lunchtime, so within 24 hours. We then, tomorrow night, will be on the phone to you, interviewing you, and we'll be giving you advice on how you can not give it to anyone else. And you, your contacts and their contacts can all be at home waiting to be tested, That's exactly how you stop this thing from spreading.
So do you think that the Chadstone cluster could derail our future plans to open up? In the
No,
next
no,
couple
I
of
think that
weeks?
we're going to respond to it appropriately. I can't tell how many more cases come out of it tomorrow or the day after. I wouldn't be thinking about things in those terms. What I'd be saying is we bring a very, very high standard of public health response to each and every case, whether it be an outbreak or a cluster, whether it be one case that we can't quite work out where it's come from, whether it be sewerage testing in coastal communities where there's been no recorded positives over a long period of time. Each and every one of these are different, they're unique, and they get that tailored, bespoke public health response. Some things are common across all of them, but it's all very localised, and that's, I think, where you get the best outcomes. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we're under 10 for the first time. We've got 206 active cases. We're reporting 6 new cases today, 4 of which are linked to known outbreaks, 2 of which we should close them out, hopefully very, very quickly. Public health team are onto that now. And the other point is, it's not so long ago. It is not that, I know it seems a long time ago because a week seems like 6 months in this thing, but it's not so long ago that we were reporting 725 cases. So the strategy's working, and its success is pinned ultimately to whether symptomatic people come forward and get tested, and whether people can just find those reserves. And I know we're asking a lot, but just to see this through for another couple of weeks.
If you're satisfied that Chadstone cluster is contained, if we don't reach that benchmark of getting the 5 daily cases for the rolling average and the 5 mystery cases, could we still move to the next step?
Well, I wouldn't make the comment in relation to Chadstone, because I think it's probably a broader conversation than just any one outbreak. We do think we have that contained, but you only know what you know. We can't be certain what comes through in testing tomorrow or the day after. So let's not. I'll answer your question, but let's not answer it in the view of one particular outbreak. In broad terms, it is possible we get a number that is higher than our target number, but we have certainty and we have a degree of comfort about the story that sits behind those cases. And I think you've heard Brett, Alan, all of us talk in terms of, if you were tracking along quite nicely and in the last 3 days of the 14-day period you got 8, 10, 12 cases, but they were in aged care, they were health workers, they were... thing we don't talk about much these days, but we have talked about a lot and we're guided by it. The number of symptomatic days before a person gets a test is critically important, because that just means there's less chance for you to give it to someone else. So that's why we keep saying to people, please get tested as soon as your symptoms are clear to you. If you're roaming around with, going about your business, and yes, you're limited if you're in metropolitan Melbourne, but if you're essentially going about your COVID normal life when you've got symptoms, then you will be coming into contact with others, or you'll be in contact with someone else who is in contact with someone else, because they're a permitted worker, things of that nature. So the narrative, the story, what sits behind all these cases will be very, 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 very important. We've always made that point, but it's balanced by the other point, and that is you can't hope to keep these numbers low. You can't hope to keep these numbers low unless you first get them low, and that's where we are headed. But we'll always reserve the right to apply common sense, apply what we know about individual cases, that whole narrative piece. That's what's guided us throughout.
Andrew Crisp has written to the Public Accounts and Estimates Committee to change his testimony that he didn't brief Lisa Neville in the days leading up to the hotel quarantine scheme being launched. What do you make of that?
I saw reports of that last night in the media. I can't make any more of it than that. It's ultimately a statement from an independent statutory officer, and he's probably the person to talk to about that.
Did anyone from your office or any of your minister's offices contact him requesting he change his testimony?
No, I think anyone who knows no is the answer, and I think beyond that, anyone who knows Andrew Crisp knows that that's not the way that he operates. He's made a statement. It's under his signature on his letterhead. He's a statutory officer. Victorians know and trust him. So do I. I've got nothing but good things to say about Andrew Crisp and the work that he does. We saw that in the bushfires, and since, if you want to know more about his statement, then the only person who can give you that is him, I think.
Should we expect yourself or anyone else to be changing your testimony?
No. Nope.
Are you comfortable with Andrew Crisp leading us into the next bushfire season? Will he be Emergency Management Commissioner for this?
No reason to think that he wouldn't be. He'll be doing as he did last summer, the outstanding job that Victorians know he's capable of, and know that he's critical to. He might have to deal with some floods between now and then. That's what the Bureau tell us. So, this is a very challenging year, but I think that the team are equal to that challenge, and you know my views on Andrew.
Should we be concerned that he wasn't briefing the Emergency Services Minister about, I guess, such a significant policy?
Well, I think we're now straying into what ought to have happened, what did or didn't happen. They are absolutely matters that the Board of Inquiry are looking at, and I've been very consistent in saying I'm not going to try and write their report for them. They are at arm's length. They've got a really important job to do, and I assume they'll be well and truly into that, writing the report, and they'll produce a report quite soon.
Does it concern you now that you know from his letter last night that he wasn't briefing the Emergency Services Minister?
No, I'm concerned to wait for the report of the Board. Having set the Board up, I want to see what findings
You're
they come
allowed
to.
to have your own opinion though before.
Well, I am, but what's appropriate is that rather than voicing opinions, let's wait and see what the Board says, on the basis that we've set the Board up to answer these very questions and deal with these very matters, Lundy.
Your
So-
opinion counts for a bit though. I mean, you sort of control.
Well,
who's
what
the
I'm saying
emergency-
to you is I'm not offering opinions until I get the Board of Inquiry's report, because I think that's the best way to go. Then I'll have many different things to say, because I'll have the benefit of a report that isn't yet written, and the detailed examination of 290,000 pages of documents, and the sworn testimony of, I'm not sure how many witnesses, 50, 60, however many witnesses it was, and all the other work that the Board and Council assisting have done.
Premier, the federal budget was delivered last night and makes
It
the
was.
broad assumption that by the end of the year, Victoria's restrictions will come in line with the rest of the nation, broadly speaking. How likely is that?
Well, we're doing everything we can to get these numbers down and to be able to keep them down, and then move to a much better set of rules and find that COVID normal. So it's a COVID normal Christmas, a COVID normal summer, and we can push into 2021 with that sense of certainty that we can maintain those numbers at a very low level. There will be cases, there will be outbreaks. That's just the nature of this thing, and that's the strategy that we've all signed up to. The intervening period, of course, between now and the end of the year, it's not just the federal budget, there'll be a state budget as well. And I can assure every single Victorian it will be the biggest, most significant state budget that's ever been delivered in the history of this state, in terms of large projects and small, opportunities for reform and change and real leadership in a number of very, very important areas. That'll all be about skills and jobs, confidence, investment, making sure that there's a real spark in the Victorian economy, and that we've got that momentum to take us through 2021, not just to repair the damage that this virus has done to all of us as an economy, as communities, as families, but a plan to be better and stronger because of 2020. There are opportunities, even amidst all the challenges we face, there are opportunities that would not have been available to us previously. Our budget will do exactly what the federal government did last night. Follow the advice of the Reserve Bank Governor, borrow to build, and use the strength of the state budget to protect household budgets. That's exactly what we'll do. This is not the time for surpluses, and it's not the time to ignore the fact that if you don't borrow at historically low carrying costs, then you'll make a bad situation worse. So to that extent, I say well done to the Commonwealth Government. Well, there are always things we could go back and forth on, whether we got enough here or not enough there. I'm not interested in having those debates at the moment. We're working side by side with the Commonwealth Government. They're out there as we speak, door-knocking people who are close contacts, door-knocking people who are positive cases. We're very grateful for their support, and I just don't think the kind of budget response politics as usual doesn't sit right for me at this time of state of disaster, state of emergency, but also we're so close. We're so close to seeing this strategy through. Our budget will be just like the federal budget, following the advice of the Reserve Bank Governor, borrow to build, because there's simply no choice, and use the state budget to cushion and support and protect household budgets. That's exactly what we will do.
So do you anticipate borrowing more than the $24 billion you've already got parliamentary approval for?
Well, the budget is a set of bills that'll seek further parliamentary approval, so we're not just locked into what's been approved. That money has not been drawn down on anywhere near full, but the budget will be delivered by the Treasurer in due course, and we'll have announcements about the timing of that soon. and I won't preempt what the budget will have in it in that sort of level of detail, but I can tell you there'll be projects large and small right across the state, investing in skills, investing in some industries that are our core strengths and we're very well known for, to make them even better, but also looking to promote some new sectors for significant opportunity into the future. This will be a jobs budget, it'll be a building budget, and it'll be a budget that won't just repair the damage, but a budget that will set us up for an even stronger future.
Have you set a date for the budget?
No, but we will very soon, and the Treasurer will be back to speak to you about that at the appropriate time.
How will you address the issue of GST shortfall? How does that create challenges for a state government to make up that?
Well, I suppose that's the point that I'm making. I had there was one particular person thought it was a great thing to criticise the government for not running a surplus a couple of months ago. If you tried to run a surplus at the moment, revenue has fallen so much that you would have to run a surplus, therefore expenditures not as much as revenue. You would need to cut into the public sector, hospitals, schools, nurses, teachers, police, AMBOs, like the list goes on and on. You would make a bad situation, arguably one of the worst situations our state's ever faced, you would make it much, much worse. That doesn't make any sense at all. So of course revenue in so many different areas is off. There will be a bounce back appropriately, but it won't happen by accident. It happens with targeted investment and the government playing its part to underpin demand and confidence. In the 5 years before this pandemic, the government I lead, the state I lead, created 500,000 jobs. We led the nation in creating new jobs. We'll get back to that through hard work and through properly defeating this virus. You can't possibly have a successful economic strategy, and particularly a successful employment strategy, until you deal with the public health challenge. Otherwise, you are simply pinballing in and out of restrictions. No one can plan. There's no certainty. We're doing everything we can to avoid that. That's one of the measures by which 2021 will hopefully be very, very different to 2020.
Did we miss out on any infrastructure spending from the federal government?
Well, look, we'd always argue for more. There wouldn't be a state premier or first minister in the country that wouldn't argue for more. What I'm doing today, Blake, is I am resisting at a time when we're working very closely with the Commonwealth Government. I'm not going to stand here from this podium of all podiums and play the usual sort of, grizzles and gripes, many of which might be well founded, but I just don't think that's the right thing to do at the moment, not while we've got the Commonwealth Government working side by side with us. If people want to be critical that I didn't do that, fine. If they want to find that as a refreshingly different way to do things, well, you're free to do that too. What I'm using the federal budget to do is to explain to you where we're going with our state budget, and it will be in full accordance with the very direct advice that Philip Lowe, the Governor of the Reserve Bank, has given us. Now is not the time for running surpluses. Now is the time to borrow, to build, and to use the state budget, a solid state budget, to protect household budgets. That's what I'm going to do, and it'll be done in unprecedented terms.
Is Victoria in a good position to get a share of that use it or lose it money, as many shovel-ready projects for road safety?
Well, again, whilst we're trying to set a slightly different tone here, I would just say, look, I don't think partnerships work well when they begin with a kind of ultimatum. I think it's much better to find common ground and work together, and that's exactly what we've always done. There are some things that we don't necessarily agree on, but the difference is I take those things to elections. We've done that twice now. And look, to his credit, all the conversations I have with the PM, we focus, and I think he's made this point publicly, we focus on the things that we can do rather than quarrels about things that are well known and well understood that we're just not going to get past. That's not where a productive relationship starts. It's where one ends if you're not particularly interested in having a decent partnership. So that isn't the way that I engage with the PM. It's not the way we engage with the federal government. We're pleased with what we've received. Would we ever say that we wouldn't want more? Of course not. We'll always be out there advocating for more. That's just the nature of the way these things operate.
So can I just clarify on the borrow to build, you are considering further borrowings other than what's already been
The budget will be delivered, and all of those decisions, all of those settings will be laid out in full, and all, not just the source of finance, the source of funding, as in whether it's borrowing or otherwise, where the money's going will also be detailed in the budget as well. and I can indicate to you that it'll be on a whole series of projects, a whole series of reforms, a whole series of targeted and broad programs and initiatives that are about getting Victorians back to work and making sure that our economy isn't just one that's repaired, but one that is in fact stronger than it was going in to this global event. There are some, despite our challenges and the great pain that many Victorians are feeling at the moment, there are opportunities that come out of this as well. I've said to you a couple of times, the toxicity of insecure work presents us with a challenge, but an opportunity. And I aim to make sure that we don't let that pass us by. That's just one example of a number of different areas.
Can you give us any idea how you might turn that into an opportunity?
No, but I will on budget day. Or sorry, the Treasurer will, and I'll be only too happy to cheer him on in those efforts.
Are you looking at projects now that we might not even have heard of before? Or are you going back to the wish list of ideas that we've seen? Or are you trying to find new projects that are you looking for councils to put stuff forward?
Yeah, we run our own agenda, and that's well informed by discussions with lots of different people, whether it be business leaders, leaders of very big business. You know, on any given day, I could be talking to people who run businesses that employ 30 or 40,000 people, all the way down to talking to people who employ 2 or 3 people. We talk to people around the world. We talk to people and listen, I should say, to people in every single sector. And there are some core strengths in the Victorian economy, and we need to make them an even bigger feature. But we also need to look to try and create some new strengths for the future. And there's some very, very prospective sectors that I think are a great opportunity for the future. I'll give you another example. You know, we have been able, through this pandemic, everyone working together with a sense of urgency, we've been able to get hundreds and hundreds of people who sleep every night pre-COVID on the streets of the inner city and other suburbs. We've been able to get the vast majority of those people into safe and secure housing. Now, even if that wasn't something that drove you and that you were particularly invested in, think of it in these terms. The costs, all the flow-on costs of not appropriately, in a dignified way, supporting the most vulnerable, all taxpayers have to meet those costs. Mental health, alcohol and other drugs, crime, all health costs, all the way through. Costs a lot more not to do the right thing by those people, is the point that I'm making. It is fair to say that issues of housing, particularly social housing, are areas we're looking at very, very closely. And we'll have more to say in all those areas and many, many more.
Getting back to COVID.
And if I go much further, the Treasurer will not be very pleased with me, because I will have
COVID normal Christmas
gone further.
in Victoria, does that include Victorians being able to travel freely interstate, or people come to Melbourne? I know other states' borders with Victoria are not under your control, but
Indeed they're not.
when does that become a solid discussion at National Cabinet to say?
Well, the Prime Minister has indicated his very clear preference, and I agree with him, that we should try and have borders open by the end of the year. I think WA is in a unique set of circumstances, given they're essentially operating at pretty well normal levels. And although I won't make it specific to any one state. I understand why other states have done what they've done. I think it would be logical to assume that if the circumstances had been reversed, we would have done the same thing. So I know it's been challenging, particularly for those who live on the borders, but you can understand why that's been done. I think our aspiration should be by the end of the year we can have a very different set of rules, very, very different. And I'd certainly like to have much more movement within Victoria by the end of the year, and if we can have more movement across the country, well, then that'd be a very good thing as well. Now, that doesn't mean that we can necessarily today land all the details of that. You know, for instance, I think we had a bit of a discussion around this not long ago. You might be able to travel interstate, but you might have to take a COVID test first. And you might have to wait the 24 hours. Or we might have one of these rapid testing technologies fully proved up with enough stockpiles to be able to do a test, and 30 minutes later, you are free to fly. Again, that won't necessarily stop every single infection, but it gives you a higher degree of certainty that a person is in fact safe to travel. So there'll be some details to work through there, but I'm confident people want to see those borders open as fast as they can be safely opened.
New South Wales hasn't had a local case for 10 days or so now. They're doing really well. from a selfish point of view, do you worry that that means they'll open the border later to us? There'll be higher thresholds for us to meet for them to then reopen the border?
No, I don't think so. I think some of the points that have been made by the New South Wales government in recent times, particularly their view towards regional Victoria, I think is very promising. My expectation is that Premier Berejiklian will be guided by the data. If there's, that is my absolute expectation. Knowing Gladys and working closely with Gladys, I would think she will be guided by the data and the science and what the public health advice is.
Year 12 sitting the gap today. I suspect you're very aware of this.
I am deeply aware of this.
What would your message be to them? Obviously, they're going to see this when they come out of it, but obviously they've had a difficult year.
They've had a difficult year. It's an unprecedented year. Year 12 is always challenging, both VCE, VCAL. There's lots of different challenges there. But, I think it's really important that we have made this decision not to have a special consideration approach where you've got to ask for it. We're instead examining at a school-based level and more broadly every single individual student. Where are they likely to finish up? Where would they have been expected to finish up? Trying to take into account all the usual special circumstances that apply in any given year, plus the effect of the global pandemic. So I think that's a really important shift, and I want to thank the Deputy Premier and all of his team for the work that they've done to get us to that point. So it's a tough year, absolutely. It's always a tough year, but the resilience and the deeply compassionate and caring nature of our teachers and staff, as well as families, everyone knows that this is a really important year, and I'm confident that with particularly the special consideration arrangements we've put in place, we'll get our Year 12s through. And I've spoken to enough Vice-Chancellors to know that they are very, very confident that they'll be able to, at the end of first year university, for instance, that's not the only pathway by any means, but from that point of view, they'll have all their first year students at the end of 2021 ready to go into second year uni. Our TAFEs will make sure that apprentices and others who have to do catch-up, for instance, will get that catch-up done. Some of the things we'll announce in our budget will make it more likely that some of those Year 12s will be employed next year than would otherwise be the case. COVID or no COVID, Lundy. So, this is a strong state, and we are well placed to find that COVID normal. And those senior students can begin their journey, whatever that might involve, knowing that the government's playing its part, doing the work we have to do to underpin demand and confidence, and to make sure that we continue to get things done in this state. That's the story of the last 6 years. Biggest infrastructure agenda the state's ever seen. Big and meaningful reforms, whether it's in mental health, family violence, the list goes on and on. Early childhood, again, we probably don't have time to list all the different things we've been able to achieve. When I say we, not just the government, but Victorians. And that'll be the story of 2021 as well.
On budget stuff, Premier, we thought there might be an announcement on Airport Rail in the federal budget. When might we expect something on Airport Rail?
We're have been for a long time in very detailed discussions with the Commonwealth Government, and I think we'll have things to say, very positive things to say quite soon.
Is Victoria ready to go on it?
Yes, and I wouldn't read into some of the time it's taken for us to come and do a public announcement. I wouldn't read anything into that. We have had a few other things on in Victoria, but this project is ready to go, and we'll make announcements soon.
Are you waiting for the federal government to be ready then, if we're...
No, I think everyone's very busy, and we'll find a time when we can have more to say about that, and we will.
Is it a case that Scott Morrison can't get here to put the shovel in the ground? Is that?
No, I wouldn't say that. He's always welcome to come and help me put a shovel in the ground. Always.
Premier,
always.
What are the rules around people in Melbourne going to a regional property, perhaps to protect their home from flood waters, or in the next couple of weeks, maybe even clearing for bushfire protection?
We'll have more to say quite soon. We'd ask people to hold off, particularly in relation to bushfire prep. We will have more to say quite soon. We're still a little bit ahead of where we'd normally be that fire action week, the time when we will be doing more of that work. But we'll have more to say about that soon.
Jim Penman joined a class action group against your government. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not in the habit of talking about matters that are before the courts.
Do you think it has legs?
I'm not in the habit of talking about things that are before the courts.
There was decent funding for mental health services in last night's budget.
There was, and that's great.
Is there an appetite, do you think, for federal collaboration with the Victorian reforms that...
I've certainly spoken to, well, the other thing, just to be fair, I've spoken with the Prime Minister about this at length, and not recently, but earlier on this year. Whether it be the Productivity Commission report and the work that's being done at a national level, or the Royal Commission, Australia's first Royal Commission into mental health that we're driving. We've got an interim report, we'll have a final report in February. I think there's too much good work been done by such good people, and not just the people sitting up at the main table, but all those witnesses, carers, clients, people from across the mental health community. They've done so much hard work to tell their story, such bravery and courage to tell their story of a broken system. And for our part, you've got an acknowledgement, not always the case, but you've got an acknowledgement that it is broken and needs to fundamentally change. I think there's an opportunity there that's too good for us to pass up. So I intend to keep speaking to the Prime Minister about that, and hopefully there are more and more things that we can do.
Does that delay your timeline for rolling out the reforms, though?
No. You've got very different systems, and part of reform, I think, will be, instead of disparate services, we have one system, so that primary care that's largely MBS funded, Medicare funded, together with more acute care, as well as all the other things that are critical to leading as stable a life as possible in all of its senses of that word stable, housing, employment, lots of other supports. We should try and make that one system that supports the 1 in 5 Victorians who experience mental illness every single year, and the 5 in 5 Victorians who benefit from a much, much better mental health system. We all pay the price. The cost of failure is huge. We've got to do better here, and to the extent that the Prime Minister and I can be partners in that, I think that'll be a good thing.
Premier Sheena Watt is going to be inducted as a Labor MP today, I believe. What will she specifically bring to your party?
Well, I'll leave my comments until that pre-selection process is completed, but I'll have more to say about that once that process is finalised.
Premier, just on the language, I think it was mentioned yesterday, Brett Sutton said the objective is to snuff out the virus. Is that still on the suppression versus elimination argument?
Yes, it is.
Where does that sit on that?
Well, there's
scale?
no, regardless of the turn of phrase that the Chief Health Officer or me or the Deputy Chief Health Officer or the testing commander use, the strategy is unchanged. It is a suppression strategy.
And can I just clarify, with the Kilmore, with the household contacts of close contacts of positive cases now being told to self-isolate,
Yes.
Is that the policy that will be going forward across the board or just for select clusters?
So, as I said, we've trialled this for, I think it's about a week or so, because your numbers get so low, you've got time to be able to do that. You've got the capacity to be able to do that. I don't know that it would necessarily be every single case. It may be. I might be able to come back to you on
So what
that.
I'm trying to get at, I guess, is if you're a Victorian who knows that a household member of yours may be a close contact positive case,
Sure.
is it now the rule that you have to self-isolate?
No, we would always provide advice. So we would always provide advice to those people, and we're having. So if you're a positive case, you have that interview, which we're getting to. Well, 96% of test results back that day. 80% of people being contacted within 4 hours of us getting the result from the lab, which is it's a very impressive performance. That contact relates to what can be an interview that goes for an hour or more, and in that interview we will establish who your close contacts are, and then we will from that establish who their close contacts are, and then depending on the circumstances of that
So it's very
particular
hard and fast
case,
rule.
then we would. I don't think so. It may become something that we employ across the board. But when I say rule, we'll always leave a bit of room. If we don't think that would serve any great purpose, then we might not do it. But it is a feature, and as I said, they've been trialling this for a little while, and it's been a feature of the outbreak management that we've been reporting the last few days, and I think it's one part of just that greater confidence that we may well have pulled these up. We can't be certain of that, of course, but it just gives us that increased confidence that anybody that might be in that field of reference has got an appropriate public health response around them. And sometimes it won't be for 14 days either. We might do the test after 3 days, and then maybe a person's circumstances can change. But it's just about casting the net wider, I think. And you can do that. It's a bit similar to you've all heard Brett talk about upstream testing as well as downstream testing. Once you get down to very small numbers, this is a downstream thing that we can do. That only works though with people buying in, people agreeing to do it, and that's why we're so impressed with people in Kilmore, particularly, who have spent the last day or so, and will spend quite a bit of time away from others. That's critical to the best public health response.
And given it's 177 people and their close contacts,
Yep.
how many people in Kilmore connected to that cafe are isolating currently?
So I'm not sure about the exact number. We can maybe, or Jerome?
We'll come back. 177 at this point are direct close contacts. I haven't got a number for the wider contacts around them. But we can come back to you on that later.
We'll try and put it in the show release if we can. It'll be, obviously, not everyone will have a family unit, but it'll be a significant number. And we're very grateful to all of them.
And as things stand, can you look down the camera and tell Melburnians now that restrictions will ease on October 19?
No, I can't say that, and I've never said that. I've said that we will have to look at the data. We'll have to look at the stories that sit behind each of those cases. But this trend is with us. The strategy is working. But ultimately, the biggest thing everyone can do, and arguably the most important thing that people can do, if you've got symptoms, please get tested, and please get tested today. Don't wait till tomorrow or the day after. Please get tested today. We'll get you results tomorrow, and your public health response, your support, your safety, and the safety of those who are most dear to you and every family by tomorrow dinner time. If you wait to get tested till tomorrow, then we're chasing. We're 24 hours behind where we could be if you had gone and got tested today. So it's very, very important. The strategy is working, and we'll have more to say as the days unfold. The data is crunched, all the public health advice comes forward, but we're in an infinitely better position than we've been in at any time for months, and that's all down to the amazing work that the Victorian community is doing.
Can I just clarify, Premier, so the October 19, that's a Monday. The 14th,
Yeah, sorry, it likely would be 18 for 19, I would think.
Yeah, so the 14-day period, is that kind of Sunday to the Sunday after? Is that what you're...
Yeah, I think so, something like that. Give or take 12 hours. I think that we'll be very clear with you at the time when we stand up. And look, I understand, I get it. Everyone's on a countdown. Everyone's looking at all sorts of numbers. We are too. And when it's safe to take a step, we will. We can't predict what tomorrow's numbers will look like, let alone another 12, 14 days on. We just have to do this one day at a time, one case at a time, one decision at a time. And that's why it's really important that every single Victorian makes the smart decision, the right and lawful decision. And that's how we'll get to that COVID normal. And that's how it'll be a meaningful normal. Not normal for a short period of time, but something we can lock in for 2021, a year that we all are working so hard to make very different than 2020. Any other issues? If not, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.